So for this second video, I received a few requests to talk in more detail about the Gokara, or the 5 main traditions of Japanese sword making. And I thought that this would be a good launching point to develop a series of videos that talk about Kantei in more detail, or that process that we go through to be able to attribute a sword to different time periods, schools, and smiths. So the modern process of Kantei, or this process that we go through to attribute Japanese swords, was developed by Honami Koson. And Koson was one of the most important figures in the sword world from the Meiji period up through Taisho and into Showa. Honami Koson worked very hard to develop a system that would make it easier for this very complex field of the study of Japanese swords to be understandable and accessible to the general public. And one of the ways that he did that was to create a structure of being able to organize sword making up to the end of the Koto period, or up to the end of the 1500s, into 5 groupings or 5 basic traditions of sword making. Before that time, swords were classified more based on where they were made rather than specific work styles. That system was called the Goki Shishido, which is based on a structure of 5 provinces and 7 roads. Honami Koson's innovation was to identify common traits across swordsmiths that worked in different areas and cluster those together into 5 groupings. This system somewhat ignores where the swords were made and follows more of the influences between schools. So you could have 2 schools that were in fairly adjacent villages, but they would fall within different traditions of the Gokaren. So the 5 schools or 5 traditions of the Gokaren were Yamashiro, Yamato, Bizen, Soshu, and Mino. So now I'm going to be going over some of the fundamental characteristics of these 5 traditions. But what I would want to emphasize is that very often swords that are placed within these traditions don't follow these descriptions exactly. They may only exhibit 1 or 2 of the characteristics, but these are still helpful guidelines to be able to place and attribute Koto blades. So starting with the Yamashiro tradition, this is a tradition that's associated with smiths who are working in and around the city of Kyoto, starting from the Heian period. The representative smith at that time was Sanjo Bunechika, but then you have a number of other important smiths and schools that followed, including the Gojo school, the Owataguchi, the Rai school, and then you have others that were working outside of Kyoto, but again were categorized with this same tradition, including the Ukai school based in Bizen, the Bichu Awe school, the Enju that were based out of Kyushu, and others. And as far as those fundamental characteristics of the Yamashiro tradition, the jihada, or the forging, tends to be composed mainly of a very dense mokume or itame hada. The hamon is typically suguha based and is composed of konie, or very small crystals. You also have some rather unique features that are associated with the Yamashiro tradition, including yubashiri and nie utsuri. The Yamato tradition is the oldest of the 5 traditions, and it's generally associated with the city of Nara and swordsmiths who are working in temples in that area. There were 5 groups within the Yamato tradition. You had the schools of the Senjuin, the Taima, Hosho, Tegai, and Shikake. Some of the defining traits for the Yamato tradition: the shinogiji, or the ridgeline, tends to be raised. The jihada will often incorporate some masame, or straight grains, to some extent. The hamon, suguha based in general, would be done in konie or nie deki, but the hataraki, the activities, will tend to be more horizontally formed in the hamon. You'll see activity like the taima blade that's featured here, which has long strings of nie inside the ji called chike that follow the masame. Bizen was the largest center of sword making during Koto times. The majority of koto blades that we find today are from Bizen. The earliest Bizen blades that we find are from the Kobizen and Ko-Ichimonji schools. And then following those, you have a number of other highly important schools in that area, including the Fukuoka, Yoshioka, Iwato, and Katayama Ichimonji schools, the Osafune school, Hatakeda, Kanimitsu, and many others. The Bizen tradition maintained a very high level of quality all the way through Kamakura, Nambokcho, and into the Muromachi period. As far as the features traditionally associated with Bizen work, jihara, or the forging, will tend to exhibit itame and or mokume to some extent. The hamon generally is based on choji, so you'll see choji, choji mirare, and gunomi mirare. In the ji, you'll tend to have a whitish pattern above the hamon, referred to as utsuri. Bizen blades may range from those that are very quiet and reserved to blades that are extremely flamboyant in work style. The Soshu tradition is probably the best known and most famous of the Gokaren, or the five traditions, and that largely is due to the fame of the swordsmith Masamune. Masamune was based out of the city of Kamakura. He was a student of Shintogo Kunimitsu and then had a number of famous students himself. The style of work from Masamune and his students was extremely influential into the Nambokcho period. Those attributes that we associate with the Soshu tradition are a jihara or forging that has a larger structured itame. The hamon is typically nie-deki and quite flamboyant in midare, notari, or hitatsura. Now, the fifth and final tradition of the Gokaren is the Mino tradition. The Mino tradition was the last of the five to appear, and generally is believed to have been founded by the smiths Kaneuji and Kinju. The hamon on Mino works tend to be midareba or gunome based, with areas of pointed gunome called togari gunome.